am seriously in the midst of greatness right now. It is an honor and a privilege to get to be here tonight with you to celebrate your discipline, your dedication, and your choice to choose to change your story. You know, God is the creator of our story, but by giving us free will, we make a lot of detours. But the great thing about free will is at any point in our journey, we can stop and say, that is not the way my story is going to end. And that is exactly what you are doing right now. You know, Jeremiah 29:11 says that I have plans to prosper you, says the Lord, plans to give you a hope and a future, not to harm you, but to give you hope and a future. Well, about 14 years ago, my life was doing everything but prospering. I had given up on my dreams, myself. I was working crazy hours, but I wasn't working toward anything. And I was drinking, as in 20 to 30 beers a day. Yeah, and I had been for over a decade. It hit me one day that I was living my life like I was in some dress rehearsal for a show I never wanted to be in. You know, I had sat in my setbacks and the regrets and the what ifs and the shame for so long that I was no longer sitting, I was sinking. You know, I had almost died 3 times of alcohol poisoning. No one even knew. You know, I had taken on the role of a victim. I had become my own worst enemy. Now, as crazy as it sounds, somehow deep inside, I knew that I was playing the wrong role because I was meant to be victorious. You were meant to be victorious. So I asked myself, you know, how am I going to get from where I am to where I want to be? Well, let me tell you, it took a lot of God and a lot of work. That story is for another day. But God saved me to use me. He wanted to birth a new type of recovery program through me. And that's the Change Your Story workshop. You know, like John, I created what I needed. You know, I saw a void in the recovery world and wanted to fill that. Now, in addition, I'm also an author and a screenwriter and an actor. And I want to talk for a second about stories, movies in particular. You all know the 3 main characters that are in every movie. You know, you have your hero, you have your villain, and you have your victim. I want to talk about how they relate to our lives, the role they play in our lives. So think about the characteristics of a hero. You know, they're leaders, they're bold, they fight for causes they believe in, they defend those they love, they don't let obstacles get in the way. You know, they find a way to get the job done. They're ambitious. What about villains? They're leaders, they're ambitious, they defend those they love, they fight for causes they believe in, they don't let obstacles get in their way, and they find a way to get the job done. You know, another ironic similarity that I discovered is their background. Most of the heroes that you look up to, well, they didn't start out well. They had a rocky beginning. You know, they had setbacks and hardships. They were misunderstood. They didn't fit in. You know, they went through things, sometimes did things that the average person doesn't experience. So we have the hero that didn't start out victorious. You know, they often started out as a victim. And then we have our villain, who obviously didn't start out as a villain. They too started out as a victim. We all go through what I call victim valley. Sometimes it's our own doing, and other times it's because things happen to us that shouldn't have. But no matter how we got there, victim valley, it is lonely, it creates shame, it is isolating, and it is easy to sit and settle and nurse and curse our problems. And before long, we're not just going through victim valley. We've set up camp. We've taken on the starring role, that of a victim. We've embraced a victim mentality. And if we stay there long enough, the anger, the bitterness, it just breeds in us. We become someone we don't want to know. So we have our hero, our villain, and our victim. So they've all been through hardships. So what makes someone, what makes me, what makes you decide they are bigger than the battle, that they're going to be an overcomer? What keeps someone stuck in Victim Valley? And what turns someone into a villain? It has a lot to do with the way we process pain. You know, we have to deal to heal. And that's what you are learning how to do right now. You know, you are replacing the lies that you've believed about yourself, about the world, with truth. You're experiencing healthy relationships. You know, science has proven that we can literally rewire our brain, which goes right along with what God has said since the beginning of time. We are transformed by the renewing of our mind. What makes someone a hero is the choices they make. Now, when people used to say, oh, it's just a choice. First of all, they probably didn't say it like that. That's how I perceived it because I was a mess. You know, I couldn't see that choice. When we are involved in wrong relationships, circumstances, when we are battling with drugs and alcohol, we can't see clearly. It's like looking for a house in a really heavy fog. You know, the house is there, but because of the fog, we can't see it. Every class you just took, every program you're going to take, every prayer, every mentor that is speaking life into you, and all the work you're doing, well, that fog is lifting. We have to make the choice to not be a victim. We have to make a choice to be determined to have a better life. We have to be willing to do whatever it takes to eliminate the things in our life that are detrimental to our success, to our sobriety. We have to be mindful and purposeful about how we spend our time, who we spend it with, what do we listen to, who do we listen to. Heroes decide they are bigger than the battle. Now, being a hero isn't about being heroic. It's about getting your life on track with God's plan. You know, I love your vivid visions. I love them. Speak life into your life. Speak life into them. Listen to your conversations, the ones you have with others and the ones you have with yourself, because I know I'm not the only one who does that. Hopefully, listen to them. Do you sound like a hero, someone who's going to be victorious? Or do you sound like a victim or your own worst enemy? You know, Proverbs 18:21 says that life and death are in the power of the tongue. Speak life into your life. Speak it into your health, your relationships, your job, your families. You know, it's not about denying the reality of things. We have stuff, but it is about speaking life into them. The Bible says to call those things forth that aren't as though they are. And when we are changing our story, it is exactly what we have to do. Now, purpose is the key to your breakthrough. And if you don't know your purpose right now, that's okay, because it knows you. It has been fighting for you. It is what has kept you alive. It is what has gotten you here right now. Now, the plan, it can be a little tricky. God 100% has a plan for our life. But we have a tendency to get that God idea, and we know exactly how it's going to turn out. We know what it's going to look like, who's going to be helping us. And when it doesn't turn out exactly like that, we're devastated. I mean, we're confused. We're hurt. And if we're not careful, the enemy will pounce in right then and pounce on your faith. Do not let him in. You tell him to shut up. There is no room for him in your life anymore, or my life, you know? Where am I? We all want results, you know, but being a hero is about doing the right thing over and over again, regardless of the outcome. You know, we have to be more in love with the dream giver than the dream. We have to be more committed to the one who has the plan rather than how that plan is going to work out. You know, now we hear great stories about people going from a hard place to success, success, success. And that is awesome. But it's not my story. Don't get me wrong. God has done and is doing amazing things through me. I mean, even more than John listed. But there has been so many heartaches and disappointments. I have worked for years on projects that are sitting on the shelves, not at Barnes and Nobles, in my closet. The difference is, no matter what happens, I'm not that roller coaster going on emotions anymore. No matter what happens, I ask God, okay, what could I have done differently? What should I have done? What should I do now? And I continue to move forward. Thanks to John Ponder and the whole team at Hope for Prisoners and all the people that he mentioned that are partnering with y'all, you are getting those tools. Each step of faith you take is going to lead you to the next one. It might not look exactly as you visioned it, but as long as you keep taking the steps of faith, as long as you keep praying and believing and doing the work, you will be victorious. You are victorious. Now, that said, if I was in your shoes right now, I would be like so full of hope, totally excited, and a little scared. But I wouldn't have to be. So I'm going to tell you what I would tell myself. Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. You are an overcomer by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. That speak life is serious stuff. With God, all things are possible. With God's strength, you can overcome anything. That is who God says we are. That's who God says you are. No matter where you've been, no matter who you were when you came in those doors years ago, you are a different person now. You've always been strong and courageous and creative. I mean, my goodness, for myself, I've created some pretty amazing stories to get myself out of mess. But what a waste of energy. What a waste of time. Now we can use all our strengths to discover and pursue our purpose. You have been blessed with an amazing opportunity for a fresh start, to be who you truly are, who God created you to be. So go out there and show yourself who you are. It is your time to shine. Thank you so much.